Get ready to challenge conventional beliefs about what's possible in creating health, wealth, and happiness. You are listening to Playing on the Edge Radio with Megan Edge. This hit show is providing you with ways of sustaining radical and powerful changes in your life. It is time to open and expand your awareness, accelerate your well-being as Megan shares wisdom, teachings, and experience from a lifelong journey of the heart. Enact the power of radical change with ease and lift your desires to a new perspective. Now, here's Playing on the Edge Radio.
I think we're starting the show.
Is it time?
That's why I did that like that, Megan. That is exactly why I did that like that, right?
You're on it.
Exactly. Because of today's show topic, right?
It's timely.
It's timely. But the other part about it is that's our conversation today.
Yes.
And to have a pause on radio, right? To have a pause on radio is akin to having that static, like on television. Well, not nowadays, television's on 24/7. But back in the day when TV used to go off, it was that crazy screen, right?
Yes.
But having that moment where there is no sound on radio, means that there's what they call, Benny will tell you what it's called, is dead air.
Yes.
Right? It's when a little buzzer goes off after a certain amount of time. And when that goes off, right before it goes off, you're on the edge of time. You're on the edge of time in broadcasting.
Right.
Where I didn't let it go that long because I didn't want Benny to have the yellow light in the studio to go like beep, 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 right? Like that. But there have been moments where I just didn't realize that we were live on air. And the yellow light would go off and it would just like go crazy, right? Because right before that, you're on the edge of time. You're at that place, you're in that space where the before and the after have not met yet. And the only way in broadcasting they do is when the yellow light goes on. But today's show, what you're bringing on, for those of you just tuning in, this is Playing on the Edge Radio. This is with Megan Edge, Radical Change with Ease. We are here today, and what she is going to be talking about is what does this mean on the edge of time? For those of you out there, let me just tell you a little bit about Megan. Certainly, you know that this show is amazing. It's a show that we've been doing together for about a year. And beyond all of that, she's done this show from places that many of us dream to be. But when we're talking about Megan and Playing on the Edge, this is about challenging conventional beliefs about what's possible in creating health and wealth, relationships, happiness, whether you want to gain weight, whether you want to lose weight, you like your job, you don't like your job. What does it mean to play on the edge? Today, whether she is teaching her fabulous classes as a master healer, as a radio host, whether it's you becoming certified in what she does and how she's sharing it with the world, today's show is about the edge of time. Throughout the show, you're going to hear how this idea of time shows up in your life right now, yesterday, today, tomorrow. My little rant about 2019, what is that? That's a year. What do I mean? It's time. Megan, we're doing it.
Wow. Thank you for that introduction. That was amazing. I feel very special now. Thank you.
And I bet you almost thought we weren't going to start the show with that pause. I know Benny was thinking, what are these two doing?
Yeah, I was getting a little nervous over here.
Well, you get a little, but it wasn't long enough, Benny, like for the yellow light to go.
Real close.
It was close, though.
Real close.
But in all honesty, Pat, I didn't actually notice it. for you, because you're in radio, because that moment is so important, that bit of time, and you don't want to waste any time, and time is money when you're in broadcasting, that few seconds becomes very relevant. Whereas I was sitting with a smile on my face going, okay, we're ready to go. And it didn't really occur to me that we weren't starting on time.
Right. And Kat, who's running Facebook Live, is like, okay, nobody's talking. Which camera do I put on? Right. And like, do I put both of them up on Facebook Live where they're not like saying anything? Right. Yeah. It does take a village. But that's why we're talking about this today.
That's right. It's such a fascinating subject. I have always been so intrigued by this concept of time. And in some ways, I've also been nervous about it. And I'll explain that. When I give myself the time to stop and think about time, it's not easy to grasp. If you give yourself a moment and ask yourself, where am I in my time today? I mean, I can look at the clock and go, well, it's 11:09, so I'm in 11:09 for the next 30 seconds. But that doesn't really describe what my experience of being in time is. And when I work with time and when I look at it and I feel into it, especially when I'm doing past life regression work, talk about jumping through time, or future life work, or even just within this current lifetime and going back into someone's past with them to help them heal something that happened in that time, we're not in time anymore. We're not in linear time the way that we in North America understand linear time. We're working in a different kind of dimension where time has a very different feel. And when I say that sometimes I feel nervous when I think about time, it's because it's so elusive. And there is a reminder there of how tenuous our own grasp on reality really is when we start looking at it through the lens of time, and how does time pass, and what does time feel like, and what do we do with our time, and whether we have fun with our time or we're afraid of time slipping away. And this is all of what we're going to be talking about today, is all these different ways that we are in time without consciously being aware that that's what we're doing.
Yeah. And, the minute that you say we're at, what'd you say? We said, we're at 11:09. Okay, so we're in radio, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're at 11:09. So what happens to me is I'm very mindful, although Benny, I bet, would wish I was more mindful. I'm sure Kat does at this point, where at 15 after, I'm going to go to break. And why do you do that? Because someone once upon a time in broadcasting said you got to have a radio clock so everybody knows what to play in between.
Right.
Now the podcasting world has literally erased that notion. And so part of what we're doing as we move into this year is we are really looking at our time clock for the show totally different. Because when you own your own network, right, somewhere the belief about time literally leaked into our infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're looking at this differently. And we're saying, okay, let's not cause everybody a lot of grief, but what if we threw time out of the window?
Mm-hmm.
What if we just said no time, right? And what would we want to build?
Nervous. I think it would make people nervous, don't you?
What's making them nervous now? I mean, can you feel Benny and Kat right at the moment, right? Is she going to do that in this show? I'm not going to do that today. Yeah, I just want to be clear. I'm not doing anything like that today.
But it's because time gives us structure. It helps us to set our day up. And it's certainly in North America where there is this really strong belief about the importance of how we spend our time, that good Protestant work ethic that many of us grew up with. Don't be lazy, don't waste time. What is it? Time wasted is the devil's tool or something like that. All of these concepts of the value of what we do with our time determines the value of ourselves. It becomes a self-worth issue. And that structure of time gives us a sense of accomplishment, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I mean, and that's why we're talking about it. The question really is not what is time, because we don't really ask that question. We
No.
ask, what time is it?
That's right. Yeah, it's 11:12.
Now I've got you watching the clock, because now you're, after doing this with me for about a year now, like you're like, oh, is she going to go to break? What should I say? So let's forget about that for a minute, and let's forget about the fact that 11:15 may be a break time, just for a moment.
Yeah.
Right. Then we get to shape a new reality. Right. So let's talk about the reality that you and I might be able to create right now if we say, I don't know what time it is.
I don't know what time it is.
Yeah.
Although I'll be honest with you, Pat, I have this amazing internal clock. My family loves this. They'll ask me arbitrarily what time it is, and I don't wear a watch, and I've cell phones in the back pocket. I'm not looking at it, and I'll say, it's about 3:10, and I'll be either spot on or off by 10 to 15 minutes, but never more than that. And it's just something that I can do. And maybe because I have a sense of my surroundings and I'm aware of my environment and how the day changes as we go through the cycle of the day, I'm able to tap into that moment in the day. Like even if it wasn't numerical for us, let's say, I don't know, we judged time by fruits and it's orange o'clock. I'd still know that it was orange o'clock, right? I'd still know it's that time of the day, regardless of what we use to describe that experience. And that when we talk about our reality, in the Facebook thing, I posted a lead to an article that talks about the different ways that different cultures experience their sense of time, even within linear time, and how that can have a real impact on people's interactions with one another, their expectations of each other, and even to the point of where businesses and business deals can fall apart because the communication around the expectation of the use of time is different from culture to culture. And I would say it's different from person to person. So my sense of personal time is going to be different from your sense of personal time. And how I see time and view time is going to be part of how I experience my reality. My time is not usually very structured, although I see clients and they come in at a certain time and we spend a certain amount of time in each session. When we go into a session, most people comment afterwards that didn't feel like their understanding of 90 minutes. It felt like more or it felt like less. And it's that whole idea of time flies when you're having fun, or it slows down when you're unhappy. And that time itself isn't a reality that we can grasp. The best we can do is put ourselves into time and create our experience of it. And we do that through our language, and we do that through our poetry, and we do that through our music. And how many songs did you find when you did that research on time and songs?
I did when we were talking about this, and I did the search on songs with the title, with the word time in the title. I didn't even search the one where it says lyrics with time in it, right? Just that. And of course, the number one song, like over and over again, by the way, people vote on this. There's like a voting thing. They vote on your number one song that has the title, word time in the title. And of course, it happens to be one of my all-time favorites, which is by Pink Floyd. But that's how focused we are.
Yeah, right? And when you start looking up time metaphors or time puns or time sayings, oh my gosh, it's really everywhere in our language. And then we create metaphors and similes with the environment or with space or with our internal experiences, all to try to grasp an understanding of what's happening as we move through these perceivable changes that we have determined means time is passing, right?
Yeah. And so now we have the language of time, as you pointed out before, right? Part of this, though, is for you, the work that you do is you work with folks all over the world, but part of what you do is transfer the knowledge of what you've created. You transfer that knowledge forward, right?
Yes.
And so that knowledge doesn't have a time boundary on it. Now, what do I mean by that? And I would love for you to talk about this. What I mean by that is, of course, when you teach something, it has to have a structure. But I guarantee every time you bring a group of people together, whether it be for your certification, whether it be for a workshop, whether it be for a retreat, there's a perspective of where you are in your life that may make the delivery a little bit different. So I want to ask you this question about the language of time. You know, what is it that we use about the language of time that either sets us free or tightens up the shackles?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So think about for a moment how often we use time or our experience of being in time as an excuse for our behavior, right? I ran out of time. There wasn't enough time in the day. And we create this relationship with time as though somehow it is responsible for how we show up in the world. That to me is very shackling. I feel like anytime we place responsibility for our sense of ourself, our well-being, and the way that we behave in the world on something external to us, we do ourselves an enormous disservice, because what we're not doing is being responsible. And I'm a huge advocate about being responsible for those things that we have responsibility for. And in my world, in my life, that's me. I have ultimate responsibility for myself, how I react, how I feel, how I choose to be in the world. And then secondarily, I have responsibility to my children, because we agreed that we would do this together, right? Beyond that, your responsibility is yours. So if you show up late and you tell me that you're late because you ran out of time, I'm going to call you on that. I'm going to say BS. Not that things don't happen to us that sideline us, like the traffic lights or the call just before we left the house. Those are all things that can contribute to us not showing up on time, for example. But being able to say, I'm sorry I'm late, this, and this happened, is showing an awareness to the external influences that are showing up for you, and changing your language so that instead of saying things like there just isn't enough time, you could take responsibility and say, I didn't prioritize that. I didn't find the time in my day for that. I allowed other things to come in and take the place of whatever this is that I was supposed to do for you.
Yeah.
And when we change that language, we change our relationship with time. And then I feel like some of that nervousness that I was describing at the beginning of the show, it begins to dissipate when we understand that while we don't have control over time, we do have control over what we do with the time we have.
Wow. So, if I might.
Yes.
Having brought up Pink Floyd and having you just pretty much summed up the lyrics of Time by Pink Floyd, the song, I mean, you know, people say, Pat, you must have like a seriously depressed and dark side, because the songs you like and why you like them, it just doesn't make sense that you are like the owner of a positive talk radio network. Well, I got to tell you, for most of my life, that was me. I grew up as a depressed kid. My mom committed suicide when I was 6. I was homeless at 17. Seriously, I haven't always been Pollyanna Patty, as Benny likes to call me. But here's the deal.
Yeah.
Ticking away the moments that make up a dull day. Fritter and waste the hours in the offhand way. Kicking around a piece of ground in your hometown, waiting for someone or something to show you the way. That is how that song starts.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Why would somebody like me in my, I don't know what year this song came out, whatever age I was, why would I relate to that? It is the language of time that related to my life.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it. Exactly. It's interesting as you say that. There's something that's coming to my mind, and we didn't discuss this in our pre-call when we get together and do our work before the show, but it's this. Where did we get the notion that time owes us anything?
What?
I'm bored. So do something instead of waiting around for something to show up for you. Time doesn't owe you anything. You're here to participate in time. As a human being, I firmly believe you are here to participate in this experience of change. And change is really the only way that we can experience time. Because beyond seeing something that is different from one moment to the next, to recognize that something has occurred that changes that, if you really think about it, there is no other way to experience time, at least that I know of.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, we are talking about time, the language of time, what we have in our consciousness to believe that we have the power over. And yet, almost every time, Megan, there we go, almost every time, right, that we are in a space where we feel cramped, we feel overwhelmed, we feel whatever we feel in that moment, right? Mm-hmm. It's as if time has taken control of a life less lived.
Right.
Or
that's powerful.
Right? Or not. And that's what today's show is about. It's, you know, as we look at the language of time, we're really not completely aware. Dr. Bree and I were talking about the fifth dimension in the last show. Time is one of those places, right? Where when you get there believe me, I don't claim to know how to get there, but when you get there in that place where the yellow light doesn't go off, right? There is a sense of freedom. Yeah. You know, tell us about the Halloween party, because you really do so many things. I've never met anybody that does so many great things with their family. I mean, I'm just like, I can't even remember Halloween. But you do so many things with your family. You know, I mean, you clearly represent how to connect with another human being. And it shows up in the work that you do. But there's always something interesting that you do that I'm thinking, I don't have any pictures like that.
Well, we have an annual Halloween party. We love Halloween as a family. We love it. And so every year we put a party together to get all of our friends together, adults and children. And we provide a theme to that party so that everyone has something they can focus on and show up in something similar or their way of showing up in that theme. And then that gives us something to talk about. It's a great conversation starter. So this year the theme was Come as a Pun. And we had some amazing costumes. But my husband Darren and I decided that our pun was going to be all about time. And we created a whole bunch of different time puns that we could then demonstrate to people. So for example, I had a clock on each of the back of my hands. Guess what that was? Time on my hands.
Right.
I had watches around my waist in a belt. That was a waste of time. We made these beautiful dollar bills. This is like what the Canadian dollar bill looks like, but I promise you it's not quite like this. This was a minute of my time, and I was handing out dollar bills if people could buy a minute of my time. And that, of course, is time is money. We had so much fun with it. It was a great time playing with this concept of time. And since Halloween, and since we did that exercise and had that fun with it, it's really been on my mind. And I'm so excited that we get to do this show, because I feel like it is such an important understanding of the human condition, the way in which we experience time and show up in time. And then it really does speak to the work that I do around healing, and how do we heal something from the past? How do we manifest something for the future? What beliefs are in the way that we need to work with over time to create a sense of well-being that is really radical, that is stepping outside of the accepted conventional binds that we put ourselves in with everything that you and I've talked about for the last year, and we'll continue to talk about. Time is such an integral part of that. And honestly, if you can't have fun with it, which is what we did at Halloween, why bother? Yeah. And it's also really important. It's a really important, I think it's important to know what time means to you. I think it's important to go back into your childhood and find out if there's any beliefs about time that you're carrying forward as an adult that are getting in the way of you showing up in your authentic, beautiful self? What about how you spent your time as a child, for example? Were you allowed to have downtime? Did you always have to be doing something, doing a chore, making use of your time? What were the things you learned growing up about time? And then how has that had an impact on your sense of self-worth as you show up in your day?
Mm-hmm.
This is why I feel like time is such an important thing to be talking about in the healing world.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is because, and we'll talk about this when we come back as well, because part of the conversation is that we have placed so much emphasis on time as a control mechanism for not just what we do in every day, but how we do it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everything from cutting corners on how we wash the dishes, right, to whether or not we get face-to-face dinner time with our family, right? Versus through, I mean, everything these days has this element of time, control, and constraint. And I say that almost tongue-in-cheek, because when was the last time? I have a friend that doesn't wear a watch. So other than him, when was the last, quote, time that you put time down for at least a 24-hour period and didn't pay any attention to it? When was the last time that any of us did that? And if you did it, I'd like to hear from you. 1-800-930-2819, or on social media, Facebook, Facebook.com, Transformation Talk Radio. And the reason that this is an important question is because when we come back, Megan's going to talk about the quantum of time. What happens when you go on a retreat and the facilitator says to you, please put your phone, your watch, and any digital device in this box? Oh boy, I got a hot flash just thinking about that. Megan, before we go to break, how can people find out more about you? Tell us about, first of all, what you are doing to offer this level of teaching to people.
Thank you. Yeah, right now, as we move into 2019, we're offering a number of intuitive energy massage level 1 certification programs. This is the energy massage that I've created. It's a healing healing modality that incorporates all kinds of different energy healings, physical healings, massage, shiatsu, moving through time. We do a lot of time work actually when we do the intuitive energy massage, because we're listening to what the body has to say and how the body's been holding experiences until the time is right to have those experiences healed. So we have a level 1 training coming up this weekend here in Victoria. It's already full. Wonderful. Again, in beginning of February and beginning of March. And you can find all the information for those trainings on my website, which is www.meganedge.ca. We're just doing a revamp of it, so it's looking pretty spiffy. Head on over there and have a look. There's lots of ways to get a hold of me. I'm on Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on YouTube. We have over 250 videos on our YouTube channel now. I just checked it this morning. And these are all trainings and visualizations and meditations, one of which I'm going to be sharing with you later on in the show or on the Facebook page. So lots of different ways to get a hold of me. I would love to spend some time with everybody.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about. Because part of this is, what if you had the freedom beyond compare? What if you had the time of your life? Okay, that's a song too. I'm going to go to break right now. That is the time of your life. I'm going to go to break right now, because when we come back, and we'll be back in 3 minutes, that's 3 minutes. That's 67 blocks of time, if not sooner. We'll be right back, everybody. Back. Welcome back. We're like right now playing on the Edge Radio. Megan Edge. I'm Dr. Pat. Radical Ease with Change. We're talking about on the Edge of Time. So Benny,
I like that. Wait, radical ease with change.
Radical. What did I say?
You said radical ease with change. I love that.
Oh, did I just flip that on you?
You totally flipped it and you changed the meaning completely. Radical ease with change. That's brilliant, Pat.
Oh my gosh.
You're a wisdom woman.
I think that's actually the way I live my life.
It's so true. Oh my gosh.
With change. Wow.
Wow. Here live,
That's
folks.
the next show.
You get to see it first.
That's gotta be the next show. Radical. Yeah.
Wow.
Because I was thinking about this. Benny, you played that song, right?
Yep.
You just played it. So I got to ask Benny a burning question. If I'm on the stage getting ready to take that leap, Benny, are you going to catch me?
Well, yeah. You know I'll be there for you.
I have a totally new visual now.
I can see Kat, who's doing the video. She's trying to think, how can I get like a little iconic Dr. Pat bobblehead, Benny bobblehead, Pat jumping off the stage, Benny catching her. Oh, that's so funny. Oh my gosh. We are talking about the edge of time. And part of what what we were talking about just happened because in the moment, in the context of this show, what I felt was radical ease with change. But your show name is Radical Change with Ease.
That's right.
But since we're talking about time, and now we're talking about quantum time, quantum time paid no attention to what that show tagline used to be.
Quantum Leap? Who remembers Quantum Leap? Put up your hand. I loved that show. Loved that show. It helped that he was really cute too. I have to say, Scott Bakula. Yeah, had a little crush on him.
But now, like, so okay. Can I just? What do you say? It digress for a minute.
Go down that rabbit hole.
Okay, because we're going to talk about the paradox of time travel.
Yes.
Do you want to know how popular this is?
The idea of time travel?
Or the paradox of time travel.
Yes, huge.
The paradox of time travel is so popular right now to the tune of 1 trillion live views. Yes, I am going to talk about superhero characters for a moment because so
of course we can talk about.
So popular right now that in the Marvel universe, people call it Marvel, but in that universe right now, an entire franchise is based on whether or not Ant-Man can come in with his time-delimited machine and reverse the catastrophe of Avengers Infinity Wars. An entire mega studio is basing our fan popularity on whether or not they can do that.
You know what, Pat, that brings up a perfect question, which is, if you could go back in time, what, if anything, would you change about your life? What would you change, if anything, about your life if you could go back in time?
Being born 6 feet, 120 pounds. I don't know. No, I'm just joking about that.
Well, my answer to that question is that I wouldn't change anything.
I'd be afraid to change it. I mean, maybe that's just me. Remember, I talked earlier about living on the dark side for a large part of my life.
Yes. Yes. And that notwithstanding, I mean, certainly there are places in our lives where we've had experiences where we wish we hadn't had those experiences.
Right.
Where we wish they could have been different. Somebody could have showed up at the right time to be there for us when they weren't. There can be regrets about that.
Yeah.
What I choose to do with that line of thinking is to look at who I am now. Look at how I show up in the world. Look at the work that I've done, the things that I've achieved, the relationships that I have, and recognize that all of that is exactly the way it is because of all the things that have happened, that I've chosen to be a part of, that have seemingly happened to me, that I have participated in one way or another. Would I love to go back and take that word out of my mouth and not say it in that moment? Yes. But then who knows what butterfly effect that has, right?
Now, that was a movie too. But
Yes.
let's tell people what we mean by butterfly effect, because I think it's really important. How often have you worked with folks, and especially for me, there are points in time in my life where I thought, had I just been there more for my sister. I don't feel this way now, but I'm telling you, I did feel this way when I was in my 20s.
Yeah.
I thought if I'd have just been there more, for my sister, maybe I could have saved her life as she died on a hospital floor. I mean, I did have that thought.
Yeah.
And that is the kind of thinking that I found myself having, where I stayed stuck with my sister in that moment for a long time.
And in that energy of that moment, and in the feeling of that moment. And with the work that I do, we call it time healing. When we go back to an event that is traumatic, and in mainstream conventional therapies, that would be, I just lost it. What is it called?
See, it's going to happen to the best of us. It could be radical ease with change.
Oh, post-traumatic stress syndrome. I'm not laughing to minimize the effect of that at all. I've been there. I know it. And many of my clients have it. What I've noticed for clients who come to see me for this kind of healing work is that what they've experienced and received conventionally has only been able to take them so far in their healing journey. Because there's a belief that seems to be pretty prevalent that the past is the past and you cannot change it. So what is, what has happened, what will be, as if it's immutable. And to that, I say it's not immutable. In fact, we can time travel through visualization, through meditation, through the belief that we can do it, back into a moment that we've experienced. And while we're not going to, at the physical level, change that experience, what we can do in this work of what's called soul retrieval is to change our relationship to that event and to the energy of that event. And what that allows my client to do is stand up for themselves in a way that no one at the time knew how to, could, or would for them in order to prevent whatever that situation was. And we do this from a place of what I call big picture thinking, which is that at a certain point in the therapy, usually not the first day, we get to a place where we recognize and understand and choose to believe that everything happens for a reason and on purpose. Even if we don't know what that is at the time, or even if it's really hard to accept that, we can get to a place in the therapeutic process where we can say, okay, that car accident, that assault, that fight, that divorce, that whatever it is, that accident, that illness, there's a reason that it happened. And we choose to give it reason so that we can change our relationship with it. And what I see happening from this kind of work, Pat, is that the event itself becomes part of the person's story, but it no longer defines who they are, their sense of themselves, and they're no longer triggered back into the emotional response, the pain or the fear that they experienced in the moment of that event. And it's from there that they can begin to heal the relationship with the event so that it doesn't define them anymore, but it becomes a part of who they are and how they show up in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, I'll share very vulnerably, one of my experiences as a young teenager was to be sexually assaulted. And even after it happened, for a few years afterwards, I was doing my therapy and doing my healing around, and I wanted to become a counselor already, and I wanted to help people who were survivors of sexual assault. I was able at a certain point along that healing journey to decide for myself that having had that experience and then doing my healing work around it meant that there would come a time in my life where I could stand for someone else who had had that experience. And I could help them heal it, understand it, recognize it, create a new relationship with it, and have it be something powerful for them to have survived, as opposed to staying victimized by something that happened to them that was out of their control.
Wow.
That's how powerful this work of using time travel as a concept for healing can be. And it doesn't matter what the trauma is. This technique will work on all of it when it is done at the appropriate time along the healing journey, right? And that actually brings me to a quick point I want to make before we jump into some of the quantum stuff we wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
Which is that we are in linear time, however we choose to experience it. And I really firmly believe that part of why we choose to come here and be human is so that we can have this experience of change and time seemingly passing, and what it is like to be in a body that has a finite lifespan. That's something we can only experience when we come here to be human. So I'm not suggesting in this conversation that we should stand above time or rise above time or not be subject to time. That's actually what we're here to experience, among other things, is being in time. But then that would bring me to the conversation about the quantum of time. And you and I have talked about this before.
Yeah.
Past, present, and future. So what does the past mean to you when you think about the past? What is that? What is that thing, the past, when you think about it?
I think for me, when you say the past, I think about the stories that I remember. I'm not very good with time. I had a friend that did a little study about me, and I'm not one of these, some people know I was born on this day at this time, and then 5 minutes later after I was born, and then my first year on my first birthday. And I remember December 11th of 1953 or 63. That's not me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I hardly remember what date today is. I don't have that relationship with time, but I do remember the stories of things that have helped me become the person I am today.
Yeah. Well, memory and time, that's a whole other amazing topic of conversation for sure. When I think of the past, I think of the things that I believe I have experienced. They have occurred. They are occurring constantly, though. And I think what we do is we tend to compartmentalize time. We say, here's the past, it's over here. It looks like this. It's in this box. Here's the present moment. It's right in front of me. It's right here. And then over here, there's a box called future. And that's where I put everything that I don't want to do yet or that I haven't gotten to yet. But it's not like that. It's a constant flow. And I would suggest that there actually is no present moment. There's that pause. Because the moment something happens, it's done. So really what we're working with is the energy of what we understand to be the things that have already happened and our understanding of the things that have yet to show up for us. And that's the flow that we're constantly in, not the present. So I would really love to suggest that all those people that are trying so hard to be present, please stop. It's just a lot of work you don't need to do for yourselves. Yeah. I think it would be easier to recognize something has happened. Like that word I just said is gone. It's down the conveyor belt of time. And the next word is flowing towards me. And I'm in this flow of what has been and what will be.
Yeah.
And I get to stand still and have it move across my field of vision.
But what happens when we push back against that? Because I was sharing a story with you during the break, which was kind of a shock to me about my relationship with time. And, I want to know about this notion of pushing back against the flow of time. And, whether or not we believe we actually have any influence of that. And yet we live in a world today where we're hearing more and more about, astral travel, about people experiencing things in life that cannot be explained in a logical, linear way.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and how fascinating and exciting that we get to live in this time. And where you were talking at the very beginning of the show about the things that I teach and how they are these beautiful pieces of knowledge and information and wisdom, and they change, but they don't change. They're universal truths to some extent. That's what we're tapping into. And I feel like instead of time being linear, if we could see it as a sphere, see it as cyclical, recognize that knowledge comes when we need it most. It shows up for a lot of people at the same time, and then it gets disseminated into the culture. And then there's another cycle of information. And right now, if you're open to it, there's a lot of information available online, in person. There's so much going on. with metaphysical healing, energetic healing, alternative healing medicines. Thank God cannabis is now legal in Canada again, and our researchers can start looking at the medicine of this plant that's been so maligned over the last 100 years. That's another show. But the idea is that we are in a time that is ripe with so much potential for us to be well if we find the information that is what we need to hear. And things like astral travel, things like conceptualizing what it's like to step outside of linear time, the best that does for us is expands our understanding of the human experience. It expands our small picture thinking to big picture thinking. It gives us the opportunity to see the why, the how, the purpose, and the reason of all of these things that are happening for us. And I love that quantum physics and science in general and psychology and time are all meeting so that we can have these kinds of conversations that support that beautiful, fun, funky show, Quantum Leap, with this idea that we can jump into the future, we can jump into the past, because all of it already exists somewhere. Maybe it's that fifth dimension. I don't know. But it all exists somewhere. And if we can learn to tap into that, those other opportunities that we've created for ourselves on different timelines, and bring that feeling into the moment, the present moment of awareness, I think we step out of those constraints that we were talking about earlier on and have a different experience of time, and really do have the time of our lives when we can be in that kind of energy.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, part of this too is, many people listening, first of all, Megan, I think it's important we let them know how they can participate in your classes and what you're teaching. And let's take a moment to do that if we could.
Thank you. Yes, you can find me on my website, which is meganedge.ca, and all of my classes and courses and certifications are listed there. Also, the link to my YouTube channel, where every talk I've ever given, we've videoed it. Lots of neat information from various workshops that I've done. You can get a sense of how I teach and what it is that I teach, to really get a sense of if I'm somebody you want to work with, or if you agree or disagree with what I say. And to be very clear, it doesn't matter to me whether you believe me or not. I don't need you to. I don't need to write about any of it. But what I love is the conversation. That's why I love these shows so much, because we get to have these kinds of conversations. You can also reach me on Facebook, Megan Edge Healing, LinkedIn, Megan Edge Healing. Just look up Megan Edge Healing, and that's where you'll find me. I also have written a book that took a lot of time.
Yes.
Heart's Journey. And this is one of the healing tools that I've created. It's a deck of oracle cards based on hearts that showed up for me in a time in my life when I really needed them, needed that symbol. And I've created healing products. There's lots of different ways in which I can help support your journey to that well-being, that radical well-being, or that ease with change. Which I really love.
Yeah.
Love that. Yeah. And there was one thing that you were saying earlier that I wanted to jump into.
Yeah.
Which is about the divine timing.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so for me, divine timing is less about God or goddess. It's less about who's above and directing things. And it's about me choosing to allow and trust and surrender into the flow, recognizing that if it is in my highest good, it will show up for me. And it isn't always rainbows and bubbles that show up for your highest good. So when you open yourself to that declaration, you have to be prepared that the things that are going to be for your highest good, that are going to show up on that timeline for you, are going to be the ones that are most important for you. If you push back against that, like you were asking earlier, Pat, if you try to make something happen before it is meant to happen, I can speak from personal experience, it doesn't work. Things slow down, things get stuck, things don't happen, they don't flow until I listen to what my yes is. When I follow my yes, then things start to flow again. And that's when I have my aha moment of, that's a moment of divine timing. And when I go back on my life, I can see lots of places where I pushed against, thinking I could control an outcome, instead of participating in the outcome and allowing it to just simply be. That beautiful Beatles song, Let It Be.
Yeah.
Have a listen to that at some point today, to really get an understanding of the difference between trying to let something go and allowing something to be. And feel how in time, those two things are very different. Those two experiences are very different between letting it be and letting it go.
Wow. I want to say this. That is probably one of the most important aspects of this. It is having the knowledge that letting it be has a beautiful, unlimited energy. Letting it go feels hard.
Yeah.
And I must strive a lifetime to get there. So thank you for that powerful, powerful message. One more time, Megan, and thank you for a great show today. What's your website?
www.meganedge.ca. Megan is the simple spelling of Megan, MEGAN.ca.
Wow. I love this. I love this. So I know we got 30 seconds left.
What?
So
no.
Is it radical ease with change or radical change with ease? All right, let's hold that thought for the next show.
Love it. Love it. Yeah.
I love it, everybody. Thank you for tuning us in and turning us on. We've got another hour of live programming coming up on transformationtalkradio.com. We'll see you next time.
Have a great time.
Cool. Thanks.
You've been listening to Playing on the Edge Radio with Megan Edge. Tune in each month on Transformation Talk Radio and the Dr. Pat Show Network, providing you with ways of sustaining radical and powerful changes in your life. If you've missed any part of this episode or want to find out more about Megan Edge, visit her website at meganedge.ca.